Okay, good evening. It's 7 o'clock. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming to the ICAS proceedings. We have a great guest speaker, the Honorable Keizo Takemi from Tokyo. Now, before we go any further, one of my junior students will introduce you. Alice Shin, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alice Shin. I'm a senior at Battlefield High School in Haymarket, Virginia, and it is my honor to introduce the Honorable Mr. Keizo Takemi. Mr. Takemi is a senior fellow of Japan's Center for International Exchange, where he chairs the Executive Committee on Global Health and Human Security, a public-private global health policy platform founded in 2007. He also serves as chair of the Asian Population and Development Association. He served as Japan's Minister of Health, Labor, and Welfare in September 2023 to September 2024, and previously served 5 terms as a Liberal Democratic Party member in the House of Councillors. Through his career, Mr. Takemi has been involved in various global initiatives, including the UN Commission on Information and Accountability for Women's and Children's Health, the Global Health Workforce Alliance, the International Ongoing Committee of the Prince Mahmud Award Conference. In 2016, he was appointed to the UN High-Level Commission on Health, Employment, and Economic Growth, and in 2018 to the UHC Financing Advisory Committee for the G20 Summit. He also served as Senior Vice Minister for Health, Labor, and Welfare and State Secretary for Foreign Affairs, leading initiative to establish the UN Trust Fund for the Human Security. In recognition of his contributions, he was appointed WHO Goodwill Ambassador for the Universal Health Coverage and was named to the Advisory Board of the International Committee of the Red Cross in 2025. From October 2025, Professor Takemi has also served as visiting professor at Nagasaki University and is the co-author of Global Action for Health System Strengthening Policy Recommendations to the G8. Thank you to Dr. Kim, who has given me this incredible opportunity to introduce this accomplished individual, and I look forward to hearing his address. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Keijo, it's all yours.
Oh, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.
Alex, thank you very much your kind introduction for myself. And in addition to your kind introduction, I consistently works for the LDP as the chairman for the Committee on Japan's Marine Strategies. And the Marines is a really important part of the Japanese national security concerns. And then also I mainly works for the Japan's healthcare issues. And finally, I became a health minister under the Kishida cabinet. But in addition to that, I quite closely works for the global health as one of the player for the Japan's commitment on the global health for many, many years, specifically under the Prime Minister Abe. I works for the universal health coverage, goodwill ambassador of the WHO.
Okay.
But on the other hand, I myself became the Senate Majority Leader after I ended the ministership as health 2 years ago. And after that, we had the upper house election last year in July. But unfortunately, my constituency is at Tokyo, the largest constituency in Japan, many floating votes. And the very negative wind came out at that time under the Prime Minister Ishiba. And then I lost my job, unfortunately, and I decided to retire as a parliamentarian.
Okay.
But consistently works for those the global health issues and also the Japan's marine strategies. And then now, I just want to, quite briefly the how the Japanese political development happened under the lady Prime Minister Takaichi. And also, this is a really good timing today and the yesterday. We received the Koreans, the President Lee Jae-min, in the oldest Japanese capital, the Nara, which is the place for the constituency of the lady Prime Minister Takaichi, and have already done quite a lot of jobs between them. And this summit meeting has made a really great success to strengthen the triangular for the security framework among the Korea, Japan, and the United States of America. But I'm quite sure that Japan's the politics is currently a major turning point, with the ruling coalition the losing its majority in both houses of the Diet. The 2 years ago we had the general election, and then under the Prime Minister Shiba we lost the majority seat, and the upper house election, as I mentioned, lost the majority seat. The why that sort of things happened, it's mainly it depends upon the unfortunate the demographic change and the very speedy aging. And as a result of such a demographic change, unfortunately, the younger generation now face very serious difficulties. The paying high rate of the premium of the health insurance and elderly care insurance, and those are the increasing rate of the premiums may cause one of the rebellions. The against wind came from the younger generation for LDP politics. This is the large framework which has never changed yet. But in addition to that, we had the unfortunate the issues of the politics and money. And this, the scandals still has a great impact on the Japanese voting behavior, specifically those of the younger populations, and also even the supporters for the conservatives. Therefore, those are the negative factors created unfortunate negative synergy effects on those of the voting behavior for the LDP. That's the reason why former Prime Minister Taro Aso took a very important leaderships to change the prime ministership of the LDP, and the majority of the parliamentarians joined this Taro's strong leadership, and then decided to organize the party convention. And then the prime minister, then Prime Minister Ishiba, had to resign, and the having the presidential election. And the reason why the lady prime minister happened at that time, you can see that strategic the characteristics of the lady Takaichi could be regarded as a leader of the hawkish of the conservative in LDP politics. That has not been occupied by the majority support in the past. But under the very, very unfortunate geopolitical deteriorations, those are the conservative parties and those are the ordinary people who support the conservative parties gradually join those are the hawkish schools under the Prime Minister Takaichi. And you can see that the content of the party voting of the presidential elections the many majority the party votings are given for the Madam Takaichi rather than the popular young politician Koichiro Koizumi. And then the Takaichi became the first the lady prime minister October 21st the last year. And then it's a very interesting thing is that the historically first lady minister means welcomed by many ordinary people, not only the people who support the conservatives. That sort of a gender support can be a key part of the Prime Minister Takaichi's approval rates. But in addition to that, the geopolitical deterioration in the Asia and the Pacific also gave the favor for the Prime Minister's position as well. But in addition to that, her personalities, the very honest and straightforward, and then clearly explain what she think to directly to the people through so many medias. And those are the political positions has been welcomed by many Japanese. So it's now the Takaichi can enjoy having the very high rate of the approvals to the prime ministership. Can you imagine now it's more than 70%, 74% and 75%. It's a totally, the high rates she can enjoy to keep it since the inauguration of the primacy at the last, the October. Therefore, but on the other hand, even though she enjoy having such a high approval rate, over 70%, still the very basic structure lost the majority seats at the both houses has not been changed. This is the very serious dilemmas. And in addition to that, the original, the partner of the coalition, Komeito, is a Green Party, left from the LDP coalition, and the Japan Innovation Party. This is a very young people headed, and also they are much more close to the idea of the conservatism with the Prime Minister Takaichi, became the partner of the coalition under the Takaichi cabinet. This is not a coincidence. This is a real, theoretical framework has been emerged because of the geopolitical sense. Therefore, Takaichi cabinet under the coalition with the Japan Innovation Party it can be a much more suitable the cabinet framework which can adapt to the deterioration of the geopolitical situation in Asia and the Pacific. But now the only those national security concerns is not only a factor which can regain the majority seats at the Diet in the foreseeable future. As mentioned in the domestic politics, also very important dominant factor whether Takaichi can create much more stable the majority seats at the both houses in the future or not. It's totally depend upon the domestic politics and whether she can enjoy having much stronger support from the younger generation. So but at this moment, there are so many unexpected things happened in the geopolitical sense. Not only the Russians' invasion to Ukraine and also the Gaza's unfortunate affairs, but now that the President Trump at the beginning of this year they used the U.S. Delta forces and kidnapped the president of the sovereign nation of Venezuela. And as a criminals, they, the sue to the New York court as a criminal of the drugs affairs in their own domestic law. This is quite clear violation of the international law. And then that's why this sort of things happened. And what does it mean? It became a very serious subject for Japan's strategic position in Asia and the Pacific as well, as an ally to the United States of America. And so now I want to talk that you know, uh, the core pillar of Japan's foreign policy is strengthening the strategic cooperation with the Korea. This is consistently the Japanese strategic positions, even though we both had so many difficult the subject like historical recognition issues and other things. But strategically speaking, the Japanese the government consistently tried to keep much more stable the strategic partnership with the Korea. And following a successful Japan-US summit in Tokyo in October last year, the alliance's operations are proceeding smoothly at this moment. The South Korean president is now staying in the Nara prefecture and had very positive talks with the lady prime minister. Yesterday, they have already reached the very clear agreement that once they strengthens the Japan, U.S. and Koreans triangular the security framework as a common interest, and then this is a bit the different expectations for the Japanese media. The Japanese media had expected that the President Lee Jae-min, he once in the past, his political position to Japan was a very tough and strongly argued that the negative common agendas in a very direct manner. So some Japanese media expected that under the new presidency of the Koreas, Japan's relationship with Korea could be much more frustrated. But it was not true. The President Lee Jae-min adopted much more flexible and pragmatic approach to the Korean-Japan relationships, and then handle in a very smart manner to contain those negative aspects in the minimum, and then widen their collaborative factors as an ally for this triangular security framework. The Japanese side, the Takaichi, quite welcome this pragmatic approach conducted by the South Korean presidencies. And now it's really harmonious relationships are happen between us. And in addition to that, the President Trump kidnapped the president of the Venezuela. What this mean for the Japan and the Koreans, the strategic position in Asia and the Pacific? The some observers for the Japan-U.S. relationships started to worry. The President Trump now they prioritize to protect the interest of their own share of influences in the Western Hemisphere rather than the respect the rights of the sovereign nation. And this means that they are having this summit. The President Trump will make his visit to China at the coming April. And if those are the big powers both emphasize the importance of their own interest of share of influence and deal by their own two superpowers, that can be a negative for those the middle powers located in the China and the United States in the Asia and the Pacific. It's the Japan and the Korea. Though Japan and Korea's strategic position become much more similar and closer. Then the President Lee Jae-min, before he came to Japan, he had visited China as a national guest and had a talk with the Chairman Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping, Chairman, strongly argued that China and Korea should collaborate each other to accuse Japan's the diplomacies. But the President Lee Jae-min keep a very clear distance and keep the neutral positions, even under such a pressure from China. We welcome this sort of a very clear the message from the Korean presidency when he visited China. And then now he is in Japan and the very harmonious relationships each other. And the media covered quite a lot in a very positive manner as a strategic partners. So there's a very positive circumstances I can analyze and listen the political development. And but I have to mention that unfortunate strategic expansionism conducted by China. The primary concerns in Asia remains China's strategic expansion. The region is currently defined by the conflict between China's attempts to change the status quo and those seeking to maintain it. The Chinese government consistently pursues the goal of expanding its share of influence into the Pacific, reaching as far as the second island chain and leveraging the growing military power, Navy, Army, and also Air Force, and also the space. And the China is steadily building military superiority through the following actions. First one is the expansion of shares of influence and military exercise. The China is expanding the scope of the military exercises in the Pacific, where it perceives the primary balance to be in its favor, and signaling readiness to use the military force to achieve the military goals in a very direct manner. And the second, we can see that those are the tendencies in the South China Sea to expand its influence including within exclusive economic zones. The China is reclaiming the coral reefs and establishing military bases on it and creating a fait accompli backed by the military force. And this became really existing, the military position of China in the southeast, South China Sea, need to strengthen their own strategic position endorsed by their own military power, unfortunately. And in the East Asia and Taiwan, the utilizing newly built the aircraft carriers, as you know. And China is conducting military exercise beyond the vast island chain into the Pacific, steadily preparing the military environment for the unification of Taiwan. And now one of the new aircraft carrier is steadily keep their own presence in the Pacific area, in a very, outside of the vast island chain, and consistently and actively they work those areas to expand their own share of influences. And I have to tell you that the one very unfortunate the things happened under the political vacuum because of the upper house election last year. My constituency is Tokyo, and Tokyo has many islands in the Pacific area. And Minami Torishima is one of the small island, 1,900 kilometers far from Tokyo, but it's a part of Tokyo. And under the 6,000 meters under this island, there are the plenty of resources of the rare metals, rare earths. And then as I mentioned, I was in charge of the marine policies in LDP and consistently support the Japanese trial to develop those the rare earths in the Minami Torishima. And this month, the Japanese the government had a plan to start the digging such a deep sea, and then started to develop those the rare earths as a trials, and nearly 200 tonnage per day. Just before such sort of a Japanese the concrete action for the development in the rare earths in this island, the June 6th last year, as I mentioned, just nearly 1 month before the voting for the upper house election, Chinese, the Navy dispatched 2 aircraft carrier near to the Minami Torishima and committed military exercise, touch and go, for 2 aircraft carriers. Can you imagine that it's a part of the Tokyo? The Tokyo is the capital of Japan, and then the 1,900 kilometers far from Tokyo. But this distance is not far from the aircraft carriers, and those are the flight by the touch and go. And unfortunately, the Pacific side, Japanese capacity for scrambles against those the attack from the hypothetical enemy is quite weak. We always prepare for the threat from the north and the threat from the south from China. But in the Pacific side is a
Mm.
weak point of the Japanese strategic defense.
Mm.
And then, can you imagine the countries who exercise those the militaries exercise and create a direct threat to the capital of the neighbor? I do realize that this is extremely, the dangerous the behavior for China to deteriorate uh, and violate the Japanese the red line of the security position. But unfortunately, just before the upper house elections, media reported, but most of Japanese did not notice what happened at that time.
Mm.
But China's those strategic the consistency to expand their own share of influence to the Pacific has never been changed and compromised. And even though Takaichi mentions, in a very concrete manner when the Taiwan issues is happened at the Diet, and that China utilized the prime minister's the comment on the Taiwan is the validation of the Japan and China's the statement in the past, but it was not true. The prime minister completely talking, but it's still within the framework of the Japanese the positions to China has never been changed, and China actually recognized it. But that China always tried to exploit this sort of prime minister's comment as a political leverage to create more positive political circumstances under which China can consistently carry out their mission to expand their own share of influence. So, the even though some Japanese media, accused the Lady Prime Minister's comment on Taiwan in a very negative manner, but most of the ordinary Japanese welcome the Takaichi's comment on Taiwan. And then it's a ironical phenomenon that's happened. As far as China strongly accused the prime minister and her own comment on Taiwan, those approval rate of herself is growing up. This is the actual the Japanese reaction from the Japanese democratic framework at this moment. And but the one of the a kind of a headache for Takaichi is a strategic consistency of the President Trump. Now he quite clearly emphasized the importance of the protection of the interest of their own share of influence in the Western Hemisphere, and violated the right of the sovereign nation and kidnapped the president of the other country. This what does means for the strategic manner. If the President Trump emphasized the importance of the share of influence, those positions can be very, welcomed by the China's positions to expand their own share of influence. And the China wants to directly deal with their own counterpart of the United States of America, President Trump, and they try to deal those the issue of the share of influence in the Pacific and Asia. At that time, what happened to those of the middle power in these regions, Japan and Korea? That's the reason why the Takaichi decided to visit the United States of America in March, just 1 month before that President Trump will visit to China. But before, Takaichi will visit the Washington, D.C., having a summit with the President Trump. She had to re-strengthen their own political basis in the domestic politics and strengthen the position to, negotiate with the President Trump. And then she finally decided to utilize her own good position, having the high rate of the approvals, and then finally decide to dissolve the lower house and having the general election and challenge to regain the majority seat by the LDP alone, and then under the much stronger political position, she wants to recreate the more stable the coalition framework in the both houses, the lower house and the upper houses. And after she strengthened their own political positions in the domestic politics, then she can be ready to more positively collaborate with the President Trump at the coming summit in March. This is gradually understood by the ordinary Japanese at this moment. Therefore, my own personal guess, the Prime Minister is expecting to finalize her position as a Prime Minister to dissolve the lower house within the near future. But this is a big challenge, and so far, if she dissolve the lower house at this moment, I'm quite sure that the LDP can increase their own lower house seats, and once again enjoy having much more comfortable political positions to create the coalition, including not only Japan Innovation Party, but also other party close to the conservatism. That's the Japanese, the domestic politics, which can be closely related to the geopolitical, the situation in the Asia and the Pacific as a whole. Now I stop it and welcome the questions.
Thank you very much, Keijo. This is a great thesis. Before we get into the Q&A, allow me to make a short comment about ICAS. ICAS is not an agent of any government or foreign principals. There's no foreign funds involved in the ICAS activities. That said, who's going to go first?
Yes, can you hear me,
Oh,
Sanjay?
go ahead, Larry.
Yes, a very important speech we have just heard. On Taiwan, Xi Jinping has 3 years ago ordered his military to be prepared to take Taiwan by force in 2027. That is only 1 year away right now. The Chinese have conducted, as you pointed out, numerous military exercises around Taiwan. These exercises seem to be simulating a blockade strategy.
Yes.
For China to attempt to subdue Taiwan. My question with regard to the US and Japanese reaction to all of this is, do you have any information or have seen any signs that our military planners, American and Japanese planners, are discussing the kinds of military measures that would be necessary to break a Chinese blockade of Taiwan, if that is what the Chinese actually resort to in the very near future? Are we discussing measures? Are we trying to plan measures to deal with a blockade? Have you seen any information about that with regard to what Japanese and American military planners are doing right now?
Thank you, Larry.
Yes, this is a very, very, important question. The Yonakunijima and Miyakojima and those the Japanese small islands are very close to Taiwan. In case of Yonakuni Island, only 120 kilometers from Taiwan. If the Taiwan committed on those the blockade and surrounding Taiwan and the utilize the aircraft carriers and the closely commit on those the blockade strategies, and it is inevitably those the Japanese island within a part of the whole blockade automatically, and then the U.S. military forces has a large basis in Okinawa, and Japanese self-defense forces now build up their own bases for missile launch against the future threat in the Miyakojima and Yonakunijima, very close to Taiwan. And such circumstances and the Japan's the legal framework of the securities. If the U.S. will be attacked by any other third forces, Japan as an ally to support U.S. military forces at that time. Therefore, if U.S. will be attacked and commit on to on the military operation to break through the blockade, inevitably Japan will be the part of it. That sort of legal framework has been already formulated. That's the reason why the Prime Minister Abe, he mentions that the emergency for Taiwan is the emergency for Japan. That is the ordinary thought shared by the many Japanese at this moment.
Any follow-up question, Larry?
No, but Prime Minister Abe was a very wise man with much wisdom. I had a very nice 2-hour session with him years ago and followed his career. And Japan misses him. I think we all wish he were still active in Japan's leadership today.
Thank you, Larry.
Yes. I once again mentions that already Prime Minister Takaichi's strategic position is very similar to the Prime Minister Abe. She officially announced that she succeeded the strategic position which has been created by the Prime Minister Abe. I don't have any doubt about this consistency for the strategic framework between the Prime Minister Abe and Lady Prime Minister Takaichi.
Thank you. Joe Bosco, are you ready?
Yes, can
Go
you hear me?
ahead.
You can hear me?
Congratulations. Go ahead.
Yes. Professor Takemi, thank you very much for doing this. It's been extremely educational already. I wanted to come back to the statements by Prime Minister Takaichi about Taiwan's vulnerability to China and how that would affect Japan as well. I think the news reports have kind of forgotten that about a month before she made that statement, the Undersecretary of Policy for the Defense Department, Elbridge Colby, made a demand of Japan and Australia to state their positions clearly on what they would do if China were to attack Taiwan and how their interests overlapped. So in effect, Prime Minister Takaichi was responding to the DoD's request that it state its position. It stated its position. China didn't like it. The question I have is, do you know whether President Trump asked Prime Minister Takaichi to cool it, to reduce the tensions with China because of his trade interests? Or was that report was in the Washington Post? And the question is whether it was relatively accurate.
As well as I know, the President Trump called the ready prime ministers after her comment on Taiwan, and the requested to cool down the Japan's the positions to create a more harmonious relationship with China. I think it's true, but on the other hand, the President Trump still keep the strategically ambiguous position on Taiwan, and still try to keep some position which can deal directly with China as a two superpowers G2. Under such circumstances, that how we can encourage the President Trump as a head of the ally to more closely collaborate each other and strengthen the mutual trust, and also once again confirm our own common strategic positions to cope with the Chinese expansionism in Asia and the Pacific. This sort of process should be proceed by the coming summit meeting in March and in May. That's we are carefully watching what happens.
Very good. Any follow-up, Joe?
Well, I guess my question would be, has there been a reaction in Japan to Trump's silence or his phone call to Takaichi, that they feel they were a little bit trapped or sandbagged? But here's Colby, the undersecretary, demanding that Japan state its position on Taiwan. And then when it does, the president doesn't come to Taiwan's defense, to Japan's defense.
This is the subject we have to overcome. Sometimes low-ranking government officials mentions in a positive manner about Taiwan's and the strategic commitment, but President Trump himself sometimes, keep their a bit different positions and talk quite directly about his own thought. Sometimes those are the inconsistencies happened in this administration. Therefore, as ally to the United States of America, Japan very carefully, collaborate each other at the various levels of the government decision making, and then they carefully build up mutual trust at every levels of the government decision making. But the most important thing is that the highest level mutual trust, the President Trump and the Prime Minister Takaichi. Therefore, the coming summit meeting in March becomes a very, very important the strategic meeting. Therefore, the Joseph, I do understand what you mean, but what we are worrying about is that some sort of consistency of the strategic position of the U.S. in the Asian Pacific. Sometimes those are the strategic consistencies should be required by the alliance to the United States of America, obviously.
Thank you. Dan Jungsu, go ahead.
I think there's somebody by KCR who asked question in a text. If he could ask his question verbally, or I could read his text. Thank you, Honorable Takemi, for this lecture. As a Japan Foundation Fellow, I have interviewed a number of your MHLW and MOFA colleagues who have credited you as the visionary for Japan's international health diplomacy since the 1990s. My question is twofold. What inspired you to incorporate public-private partnership, PPPS, and what about Japan's health diplomacy? Would you change now or do differently? Thank you. Catherine Ibata Irens, JFIPP Fellow, Ratsumikan University, Tokyo.
Well, as well as Japan's health diplomacy, Japan's position has never been changed, very consistent. The last month, the December 2025, Japan launched the UHC Forum and the Knowledge Hub for UHC Finance in collaboration with WHO and the World Bank. And the purpose of this UHC Knowledge Hub is to widen fiscal space of the low and middle income countries on the health financing in order to strengthen their own sustainability of the process to achieve the universal health coverage. This position is very, very similar to the strategic positions of the United States of America under the President Trump. Even though the President Trump decided to withdraw from the WHO, still comment on the global health issues in the bilateral context. And then they concluded 8 or 9 the African countries conclude bilateral MOU, and then decided to continuously give the financial resources. But on the other hand, always the administration require the return and the benefit from their own financial commitment. For example, that health data and also those are the purchasing the U.S. Health-related the products. More directly connect to the U.S. interest on health through those at the bilateral financial contribution. But the purpose is to widen the fiscal space of the low and middle income countries itself is very similar to Japan's position in the multilateral framework. In addition to that, the United States, the State Department announced the American First Global Health Strategy September 4th last year. And then in which they announced the consistent strategic framework in the bilateral context on the global health issues very much indeed. And As far as the State Department position can be continued, our multilateral approaches can be collaborate with the United States of America in the field of the health diplomacy. Therefore, the Japan's position is very consistent and also has a still large potentiality to collaborate with the United States as a partner for the global health issues as a common.
Very good. Thank you. Jungsu, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Kim.
All right.
Professor, you did mention about the United States kidnapping President Maduro and how that might impact Japanese strategic policy, but you did not elaborate on that. So could you elaborate how the seemingly rogue violation of international law will impact by United States might impact Japanese strategic policies?
We have much more carefully analyzed the decision-making process of the President Trump committed on such sort of a kidnapping of the president of other sovereign nation. They recognize the president of the other sovereign nation as a criminal for the drug issues. But in the past, we had not expected the government of the United States commit on such a kidnapping for the president of other sovereign nation. But why he did it, especially in Venezuela, in a part of the South, American continent, this means that the President Trump recognized the North and South, the American continent is a part of their own share of influence. And then they try to protect the U.S. interest in the Western Hemisphere beyond the respect of the right of the sovereign nation. This is the clear from the U.S. action on this kidnapping. But if the U.S. apply the similar decision making for the Asia and the Pacific areas, it's a problem for China, Korea and Japan. If they recognize the protection of share of influence is much more important than the right of the sovereign nation. The China side has a similar thought, and they recognize the importance of the share of influence. And then, if the both parties, US and China, can agree to talk about the share of influence in Asia and the Pacific, what happened to the other middle power in the Asia and the Pacific? There are so many, uncertainties happened as a result of such sort of a deal for the share of influence. That's the process we have to avoid, and we have to persuade the President Trump, don't apply this thought to the Asia and the Pacific. This is a decisively important, the national interest of Japan's strategic position. I think this is very similar to the interest of the Korea as well.
Very good. Thank you. Yunso Choi, are you out there?
So my question is, in your speech, you mentioned Korea as a strategic partner in the geopolitical area of Asia Pacific. I'm curious, how does Japan conceptualize South Korea's role in the international politics, and what specific area does Japan consider cooperation with it, like essential?
I think it's the most important part of this, the alliance framework in the triangular is a military.
Mm.
Already those the militaries has started the joint military exercises in order to strengthen our deterrence power against the hypothetical, enemy in this area. I think that this is the first step, and then, in addition to those the military collaborations, we also we have to create much more harmonious relationships between the majority people, the both sides. Fortunately, in terms of the culture and pops, the Japanese younger generation has a very, very strong sympathy to Koreans. Many Korean stars are stars in Japan as well. And those are the common, cultures can be a very important the basis to create much more harmonious bilateral relationships, which can be endorsed those the future more strategic, collaborative framework between us. Therefore, we should have much more comprehensive framework in which we much more closely collaborate each other and strengthens the basis of the collaboration, of course, including those culture and pops. That's my own basic posture, how to collaborate with the partner of the South Korea.
Very good. Thank Yoshi Makino.
Okay, so Mr. Takemi-san, so thank you for your nice speech. And so I have one question. So how do you think about the possibilities so the summit between US and North Korea?
Well, the North Korean issues is really a great headache of us, but at this moment, the President Lee Jae-min and Japan's position in terms of the North Korea become very similar, and the non-nuclearization for the North Korea is a common interest, and the encourage North Korea be much more flexible to collaborate with the South Korea and Japan. But on the other hand, Japan and North Korea's, we had a very serious, unfortunate issues is kidnapping issues. The Japanese kidnapping issues is very serious, the sentiment has been already created by the many Japanese against North Korea. Therefore, even though strategically and theoretically we have to be flexible to involve North Korea into much more pragmatic, the context. But on the other hand, there are many other domestic political obstacles we cannot easily to collaborate with the North Korean side at this moment. And also North Korean side are now worrying about those new tendencies of the triangular security framework, the Korea, Japan, and the United States, which can be a very negative impact on the Korean own national interest. Therefore, at this moment, within the foreseeable future, it's not so easy to foresee any the drastic change for the North Korean issues, including nuclear issues at this moment.
Very good. Thank you. Mindy Cutler, I guess you seem to have some problem. Okay, Keijo, I want to, Mindy, are you ready?
Well, I don't know how much of a question, but first is I don't know if our speaker saw my note, but please stop saying Lady Prime Minister. We live in 2026. We don't say that anymore. And that's not so unique or unusual anymore. But the Ministry of Defense had released its triennial survey on Friday, and the basic message from it is that the Japanese people don't see their militaries doing much more than humanitarian and domestic humanitarian work. There seems to be a big divide between what the Japanese people perceive of their self-defense forces and what people like Abe and Takeichi and a whole group of other people seem to believe it's going to do. How do you explain this divide? And what is their implications?
But I don't think that it's such a serious divide happened in the Japanese politics. For example, I belong to the conservative liberalist and comment on those health issues as a common beyond the national boundaries. But on the other hand, strategic manner, Japan have to strengthen their alliance with the United States of America and also re-strengthens our alliance with the Korea and create much more efficient, security framework in this triangular system. And the ordinary Japanese, I can say that still we have some anti-war sentiment endorsed by the Japan's war experiences in the past. But recently, most of those are the people who support the conservatives belongs to the younger generation rather than the older generation. And the political momentum is now growing up. And those younger generation also pay much more attention on the global health issues beyond the national boundaries as well. So that is a very, I think, well balanced the Japanese sentiment, which can cope with this the complicated the global affairs. Geopolitically, it's deteriorated, and the military we have to strengthen our positions, and we strengthen those of the alliance with the United States, but also Japan as a responsible, the maturing countries to commit on the common agenda beyond the national boundaries, such as the health and also climate change and others. That sort of a very comprehensive the framework can be accepted by the many Japanese. Therefore, I don't think any of those serious divisions happened in the Japanese politics at this moment.
Hide-jun, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Kim, and thank you, Minister Takemi, for your insight. It's a great honor to ask you a question. My name is Hije Jong, an undergraduate student at Azusa Pacific University in Southern California. I'm double majoring in international relations and honors humanities with a minor in economics. I have been following Japan's political developments with great interest. As you mentioned, the LDP is now governing in a minority diet, which may require greater compromise with opposition parties. As a result, the government may need cross-party support to pass key legislation, including the budget. However, opposition parties have advocated for proposals such as consumption tax cuts and universal tuition support, policies that may be politically popular but fiscally costly. So my question is, how can the Takaichi cabinet balance necessary political compromise with long-term fiscal sustainability, especially under strong populist pressure? Thank you.
Oh, it's a wonderful question. It's a real dilemma for the Takaichi herself. The populism is always hate tax, especially the increasing rate of the consumption tax. and also the increasing rate of the premium of the health insurance. But this is inevitable under the speedy aging in Japan's demographic change. Can imagine that the super aging has happened in urban area in Japan. 10 years later, 2035, more than 10 million populations becomes over 85 years old, and most of them live in urban areas such as Tokyo and Osaka. And on the other hand, the active working the population from 15 years old to 65 years old, those are the active working populations will disappear within 10 years, more than the 4 million workers. And this process will be accelerated at the 2030s. 2030s, can you imagine? More than 8 million active labor forces will disappear in the Japan's labor markets. Even we are having a large size of the super aging population. In the urban areas, we are facing very serious difficulties how to protect their own health of the elderly citizens and how to protect their own the human dignity. That sort of issues are very serious issues in Japan's politics. But on the other hand, if we can take care of those increasing the elderly populations, we need much more money. The money where come from? It is inevitable, the consumption tax, and also inevitable to increase the premiums. But if we will do it, those younger populations have to take much more serious economic burden against such sort of increasing expenditure for the elderly care services. Then this is a very serious political dilemma for the Prime Minister Takaichi. If nobody knows how to keep the world balanced and widen their own support from the both side, elderly generation, the younger generation yet. It may be a magic, but one of the response for this resolution come from the digitalization. The digitalizations, can be the decisive factor to create much more cost, the benefit, the process for this health, the security issues is concerned. Therefore, it is obvious that the Prime Minister prioritized much more digitalization of our medical digital transformations and also elderly care services, and then cope with those of the increasing burden of the healthcare services for the younger generation. But nobody knows to what extent this digital approach can be modified. Those are the burden of the younger generation in the future yet. So this is a really difficult dilemma for the Japanese, Prime Minister. But I can say that the quite similar phenomena happened in Korea as well. But also not only Korea, many other advanced nations, Singapore, Hong Kong, and even in China. Many super aging population live in the urban area and socially isolated and create very serious political problem in the urban politics. Those are the tendencies we can see as a common the political tendency in the Asian countries, especially Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and other ASEAN countries.
Very good. Thank you. Jung-soo, go ahead.
Could Japan open up the border and welcome immigrants all over the world to address the problem of population aging?
Oh, that is inevitable. We have to open our labor market for the foreign labor forces. We cannot cover those increasing demand of the elderly care services, especially in the urban area. But now that the 2.3% of the total population become foreign residents, but very small rate. But even though such a small rate of the foreign residents, already a kind of a xenophobia against foreign people has already happened in so many places. And some of those are the conservative parties strongly argue that we have to stop the foreign labor forces. But because of their own negative sentiment against the foreign residents. But as I mentioned, that under such a demographic change in Japan, and how we can create active aging society. Active aging is very important. Even though we are having speedy aging, how we can create social and economic dynamics as active, and then keep at least the economic growth in a plus manner, plus 2 or 3%, even in the 2030s, and then keep some size of the budgeting process to support elderly care services. So this is really closely collaborated with so many complicated matters, economics and social welfare services, the demographic change. That sort of very complicated factors always have to analyze in the one framework and then show the vision for the Japanese people and how we can cope with those the issues under the speedy aging in the urban area. Therefore, if the Prime Minister Takaichi wants to create really stable the political basis in the Japan's politics, the foreign policies and defense policies is a very key, but it's only cannot widen their own support from the other the ordinary Japanese people. Therefore, at this moment, she have to prioritize those security policies under such a geopolitical conflict is coming out. But simultaneously, she have to prepare for her own vision to create much more sustainable social welfare systems under the speedy aging in the future.
Thank you very much. Joe Bosco, do you have any follow-on question?
I'm not sure you have time, but I did
Yeah.
want to follow up on Ms. Choi's important question about Japan-South Korean relations. Given the perceived unpredictability of the Trump administration and the danger that is increasing from China, supposing that South Korea were to decide to build its own nuclear capability, would there be quite a strong reaction in Japan against that?
No, but whether we have to possess the nuclear weapon is also very serious subject for us. Domestically, we can see that still many Japanese has a negative sentiment against those nuclear weapons because of our experience of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Those domestic sentiment is still very important to keep Japanese position as a very peaceful manner. But on the other hand, when we cope with those the unfortunate the expansion of the military exercise conducted by China in the Pacific areas. And we cannot keep the real balance of power in this region, even under the Japan, US, and Koreans triangular. Then we have to think how to protect our own countries in a very independent manner. You know, the nuclear issues may emerge at that time in the future, but that gradually happened in such sort of discussions in a very, silent manner, I think.
Thank you, Mindy Cutler. Mindy, are you out there?
I'm out there. The aging population everywhere in Korea, China, and Japan. Who's going to be left to fight? How is that possible? So there's a lot of things that point to Taiwan is on its own.
You know, this is a real serious common agenda. Japan, Taiwan, and Korea, but also China. When I was a Minister of Health and Welfare and Labor, I made my own visit to China and had a very positive talk with my counterpart of the Chinese Minister of Health, and also some member of the Politburo. But always they are very friendly and positive to collaborate with Japan in terms of those of the health-related issues, very much indeed. And especially they know that increasing number of those of the elderly students in the urban area become a very serious subject for them as well. They knew that. Therefore, they want to collaborate with Japan how to handle those of the elderly care population in the urban area. Therefore, I myself, as a Minister of Health, concluded the MOU with China. And then still under such a serious circumstances, the collaboration is continuing. Therefore, this sort of, the strategic position is very, very important. Even under such an unfortunate deterioration of the geopolitical conflict with China, we also have to keep those space of the collaboration, the health and elderly care services, and those issues is a real common issues and can be the place for the collaboration. I do realize that we should be always cool and create those the space for collaboration with China as well. Health and the elderly care services just like that.
Very good. Thank you. Alan Gold, you have the last honor. Alan, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Japan has very few natural resources, and therefore geopolitical events have more impact on them, making them more vulnerable. How do Trump's tariffs affect the economy? How do you intend to offset that?
Oh, it's a very difficult question. The Japanese industries and the private sectors are really worrying about those, President Trump's use the tariff as the resources of the dealing with their own economic policies. But so far, the Prime Minister Takaichi can modify those the position of the President Trump, focusing on the tariffs of the Japanese product. That now that the 15% can be kept, and those are the automobiles, and those are the industries export to the United States. Originally faced very serious difficulties because of the high rate, the 20 to 25%. but gradually modified. The Japanese government consistently and patiently negotiate with the U.S. counterpart and modify those the tariffs in a much more reasonable manner. That sort of patience and consistency of the negotiation is required for the Japanese government how to handle these issues. And we don't want these issues become much more serious issues between Japan and the United States of America.
Very good. Larry, Jung-soo, last owner, Hije, Yun-sir, anyone, Mindy?
Can I
Okay.
ask the last question real quick?
Go ahead, Hije, go ahead.
Okay, so even if Prime Minister Takaichi maintains high approval ratings, governing as a minority leader makes internal unity within the LDP even more crucial. How do you assess the LDP's internal cohesion right now, and what leadership style is needed to manage factional rifts effectively?
But within the governance structure of LDP, can be very, very efficiently collaborate with the Prime Minister's office. And the Taro Aso is now the vice president of LDP, and also the Secretary General is Shunichi Suzuki. Shunichi Suzuki is the younger brother-in-law to the Taro Aso, and both belongs to the Aso faction. And those guys are core to collaborate with the Prime Minister's office and also strengthen the governance for the Prime Minister to mobilize those of the political resources of the LDP in a much more efficient manner. So far, so good.
Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, time is up. We let the Minister Takei to go away so that he can have a breakfast, right?
Yes, thank you very much. But I enjoyed I
Very
learned
good.
quite a lot about those, your thought and perspective on the very important strategic issues as a
Well,
comment. Thank you very much.
very good. We'll get back to you, Keijo.
Okay,
Let's
thank
give
you.
him a ride.
Thank you.
The meeting is adjourned.